Okay. All right. That's much better. All right. I would like to welcome everyone to our November product focus session. Thanks everyone for attending today. Today we have a couple surprises in line. But I don't want to give those away. We are definitely going to talk through our very popular CX series. So Dave Gallagher is going to take us for a walk through our CX series today. And then TAC Endo is going to go back and give us a refresh on the FH34 SRJ, as well as might have a couple surprises as well. So we've got some refresh product and some new things, new little tidbits that are coming. So just as a reminder, please make sure everyone take a moment to mute your microphones. Do that. Please, if you have a question during the session, feel free to throw it in the chat so you don't. So if you have something and you don't forget it, throw it into the chat right away for us. I do monitor that actively, and when I find that in to get it to the presenter, I'll do that, or we'll have time for questions at the end as well. So without further delay, I will hand the microphone off to Dave Gallagher. Dave, take it away.
Thank you much, sir. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. As Scott mentioned, we got a bunch of items on our list, but really some of this is kind of a refresher. The CX series, as many of you know, is the USB Type-C product, and that will be my topic for today. You probably are already aware of this, but just in case you aren't, there's recently been a change in the EU regarding USB Type-C connector usage. They have what they call the USB-C Universal Law, and the effective date, starting date for that, believe it or not, is December 28th, 2024. So just a little over a year from now, and this will require that all new devices use a common charging system based on the USB Type-C connector. This is a big change, and it's the first time we've seen really a standardization like this in a very long time. So any new customer doing business in the EU, any of your customers that are doing business in the EU, they're going to need to make the switch away from probably the Micro B5, if that's the connector that we see quite a bit in the field. And from a standpoint of technology, we definitely see customers still using that product. And so when we're looking at connectors out in the field, if you're trying to figure out, well, who can I sell USB Type-C connectors? Well, that's pretty easy. Look to see who you're selling Micro Bs or some of the older connectors to. Those folks, they need to make the switch if they are doing sales in the EU. Quite frankly, this is going to influence the global market in general, because most companies design their products to work in multiple markets, and as a result, they're going to need to maintain compliance with the new EU standards. So that date, December 28th, 2024, sounds like it's far away, but man, it seems like this year has gone flying by already. I can't believe it's November and Thanksgiving's right around the corner, my favorite holiday of the year, because man, do I love to eat food. So looking forward to that, and hopefully you are too. Just a quick look here, a snapshot from a technology standpoint. USB technology has been around since the late 90s as a simplified choice for, keyboard and mouse and printer connectors. That's what it was originally developed for. And as we know, this has certainly changed a lot. But I'd say over the years, it really, looking back at the beginning, it wasn't until the 2.0 version was released that any kind of wide adoption of this interface was really seen. Although FireWire handled faster data rate, due to the high cost of licensing, USB open source, the concept was really a much better choice, and honestly ended up being the number one choice for system designers going forward. The Type-C connector was released with the USB 3.0 standard, and today it is growing rapidly in popularity. Much of it's driven by the fact that you can rotate it 180 degrees and still insert it in, but it's also things like the EU standard are driving that. Looking at the graphic on this slide, you can see there are many different standards and choices. Sometimes this can get very confusing. The USB-IF is the organization that runs this and defines this stuff, and they decided to reduce some of the terminology not that long ago. and they released a version called USB 4. So you're going to start seeing the term USB 4. Don't worry, it's not a big deal from an interface. Still the Type-C connector, still pinned the same as it was before, backwards compatible and everything. What they did is they got rid of the 3.0, 3.1, 3.2. Man, which one am I looking at, right? So now it's just USB 4. It's kind of like your cell phone when you think, 5G, 4G, 3G. That's called, 5G is actually fifth generation. USB 4 is called fourth generation, and that's their plan. Going forward, the next iteration will be USB 5 and USB 6. That's their plan moving forward, to try to get rid of the version numbering 3.0, 3.1, 3.2 type of style, because it was very confusing to folks. So we're going to talk a little bit about TID ratings here. Scott, can you post our first poll question for today? And so that question is, have you had requests for TID ratings on products? And, so what is a TID? The USB specification does define certain requirements for performance. And to maintain compliance with the standard, the USB-IF has instituted what they call a compliance program that provides some form of reasonable measures of acceptability to the standard. The compliance program uses multiple test specifications, and they issue a test ID, or TID. That's all that stands for. It's nothing fancy. Test ID, to track and define the test criteria used to evaluate a product. Many of the Hirose items have test IDs assigned, but not all. And I get this question once in a while asked, well, why don't you get it to all? Because there is obviously a cost to do that. And depending on what the customer needs are, most customers don't need to see the actual ID. And many times our standard testing document is fine to make them happy. But Hirose does design all of our connectors around the TID standards, or I should say the USB standard. So when we're looking at the interfaces, it's important to understand that we are focused on performance. We always have been, and we will continue that in the future. And as a result, your customers can rely on Hirose to produce awesome products for our Type-C connectors. Products that pass this level of acceptability are considered USB-IF certified, and they get actually added to the integrators list on that website. And they have a right to use like logos and license, logos and related to the product with those items. So, and just from an example on this slide here, I got many of the different logos that are associated with the USB-IF organization. So when we're talking about connectors, Hirose carries a wide variety of Type-C products. At last count, we had 28 different standard variations, and 23 of those are receptacles. Although not all pictured here, I'm going to talk about some of the most common features and capabilities that you'll need to know about. So let's hit on some basics while we're looking at this slide. USB can support up to 40 gigabit performance. However, the most common data rate today is either 5 gigabit speeds, which is sometimes called Gen 1, or 10 gigabit speeds, which is sometimes called Gen 2. So when you hear those terms, Gen 1, Gen 2, they're referring to the data speed primarily. The standard power rating is up to 5 amps, up to 48 volts, and Hirose actually has a few products that support as much as 6 amps for customers looking for that ultra-fast charging type of applications. They may want a 6 amp version of the connector, and we do offer some choices in that realm. The familiar reversible connector makes this interface easy to use for the end users. And now that this is really a global standard, we expect adoption to continue for many years into the future. The Type-C should support up to 10,000 insertion cycles, but I will admit that many of our competitors do not. I've experienced this personally. I have a pair of earbuds. I love my earbuds, but one of the problems I've only owned them for about maybe 10 months, and the USB receptacle on them is already broken. And it does not, the cable doesn't stay in, it just falls out all the time. So I kind of have to do this funky balance thing to get it to stay in place whenever I'm trying to charge my earbuds. So kind of frustrating. And so one thing Hirose is really known for is that clear tactile click feeling of our connectors when they're mating. And it is very frustrating when that cable falls out, or you don't know if you have it properly inserted. And that's a big advantage with the Hirose product line, is you do get that very positive click feeling when the plug is inserted into the receptacle. So keep that in mind. If you have a sample of our product, please do carry it with you to your customer site, because getting it in their hands and letting them feel that difference is going to make a big deal for them, and they're going to understand it immediately. Scott, if you could post our next poll question, and we'll get into our next slide after that. So our next poll question is, which mounting style do you see the most? And there are 3 primary mounting styles for the receptacles, and you can see all 3 on the screen here: top mount, mid mount, and vertical mount. Top mount connectors are often found in larger electronics or in industrial applications. The PC board thickness can vary in industrial applications, and honestly, I get this question quite a bit. The connector legs are not required to protrude through the bottom of the board. And that is a question that I do get. Is, hey, Dave, my board's so thick that I can't see the legs coming through the other side. Bear in mind, this is like a pin and paste type of connector. And so you don't have to see the legs protrude through. Your industrial or some of your medical customers may not necessarily be familiar with that, and they get concerned about retention force of the connector to the board. And let me tell you, when the board gets thicker, if the hole fill is done correctly, and the fill is complete in the hole, even though you do not see the legs sticking through the other side, the retention force, believe it or not, actually rises as the PC board thickness gets a little bit thicker. So if you don't see the legs come through, that's okay. No problem. We are fine with that. And if you have a customer who has concerns on it, we do have some test data on a couple of different board thicknesses that we may be able to discuss and review with your customer if they have this concern. So bear that in mind. Just because you don't see the legs, that's okay. Top mount in the industrial medical market, if you're talking to customers dealing with USB Type-C in those markets, probably a top mount is what you want to present to those customers. Mid-mount designs are what are most commonly found in smaller portable devices such as cell phones and tablets. This connector typically aligns along or very near to the center line of the PC board, allowing for a very clean fit in tight spaces. Couple things about mid-mount connectors that you should know, and that is the retention to the board is a big concern in the industry on these. We do see a lot of complaints, and I've done some reviews of, looked around at some of the competition out there, and one of the common things that I see in the market is these front legs that you see on our connector in this design picture here. Many of our competitors remove those legs, which allows them to move the connector closer to the edge of the board, and they talk about having very narrow depth on the board. Well, that's a neat concept, but that means all of the force applied by the cable gets applied back here to where the data contacts are located. This is not good. This means that over time, eventually the connector will start to rock in place as those contacts fail. Hirose does have these mounting points in the front, and this allows excellent retention to the PC board and gives us a much higher durability overall. Again, think tablet type devices, think portable medical devices, things that are thin, where they have a single PC board and they're trying to get the USB connector out to the end or the bottom of the housing. That's typically a mid-mount design application. Vertical mount products are typically found in devices where space is not as controlled. You may also find these in applications such as sound bars or other devices where there may be an I/O panel maybe on the back of the device. There's multiple different types of connectors all nearby each other. Using vertical mounts typically makes that job a lot easier. Hirose, again, looks at the retention force to the board. We provide design guides. And let me just mention, we do a lot of design guides, not just in USB and other areas, that assist customers in how to set up their board correctly. Our drawings and even our catalogs have things like the layouts of the PC board when we have drawings and models online to help them out. So great resources available to your customer when they're trying to understand these products. Our next category of feature capability I wanted to talk about is waterproof connectors. We do get a bunch of inquiries, and if you think about waterproof Type-C connectors, most people think about their cell phone, right? You have a cell phone that has Type-C connector on it, and now you don't have to worry about as much if you accidentally drop it into the sink, into some water, you take it out. Gone are the days of having to tear it apart and pack it in rice to dry it out before you could use it again. Really, in the case of these connectors, the water may get into the receptacle. Your phone may prevent itself from charging until that dries out or is cleared. But other than that, it will not get through the connector into the inside. Now, there's a couple of things about this when we talk about IP ratings. First off, this waterproof does not mean that you can use the connector while it is submerged in water. This is really just referring to the ability of the connector to keep moisture out of the electronic device. And there's a couple of ways we have this. We have some controls on the inside of the connector that allow for that, but there's also a gasket on the outside. Now, we do offer a version that does not have a gasket on the outside. That's okay. Some of our customers actually prefer to design their own gasket that will interface with their housing better. So as a result, you can buy this connector with and without the gasket. IPX8 rating refers to immersion in from 1 meter for either greater than 1 meter and greater than 30 minutes. X7 would be 1 meter for 30 minutes. There are different ratings. I put them on the slide if you ever want to know what they all are. Their information is available here. Actually, Scott, I forgot to ask you to post that last poll question talking about waterproof capabilities. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate that.
Waiting for you to ask me. I'm like, he's talking about the waterproof. I know it's going to come.
Yeah, I usually try to remember these things on the slides, but I forgot in this case. Sorry about that. So waterproof, the question talking about, capabilities, do your customers need it waterproof while in usage, or do they need it waterproof just to protect the internal electronics? Most commonly, we see just for protection of the internal electronics, not necessarily during usage, but I am doing a bunch of market research about waterproof during usage. So if you have applications related to that, and we'll see from the results of the poll, hopefully, what that level of interest is. If you see applications to that, I would be interested in hearing about them. So, feel free to drop a note out to your local account rep or RDM, and they can gather up that information for you. And just one quick note about the poll questions as they come through. We do appreciate your answering the poll questions. If you missed one of the questions, you can go to the chat box. You can scroll up and still answer it. It is still displayed in your chat box. It's a great way to be able to get that to get that information out there. We do hope that you all take a moment to answer any of the poll questions. So let's jump on to our next key feature, and that's a Type-C flange mount design. If this is one of those hidden gems at Hirose that I'm really surprised I don't hear more inquiries on. If you have a customer, especially in that industrial space that's looking for the ultimate in ruggedness, we have variations of the USB Type-C receptacle that have a flange on it that allow you to drive a couple of screws through. Typically, you have the screws coming through the top here of the connector. They go through the PC board, and often they go into a plastic boss on the housing of the product. And I just threw some pictures up here of what some typical bosses look like. I'm not referring to any particular one, but these are some of the more common designs you see. You've probably seen this in electronics before. The screws would go down through the PC board and into one of these bosses on their housing, or some other mounting method up to the customer. I've seen some various ways they've done it. This is a great way to improve the durability of the connector. Keep in mind, when somebody's inserting that cable in, all that force gets applied to the mounting on the PC board. If you want to prevent that force from applying to the PC board and or the contacts, this screw mount flange design, if they have the space for it, is a great solution to solve that. So this is a great way if you have that I would say medical customers are probably your best choice for this type of application. Think those portable devices where there's concerns about the cable getting banged around or extra forces being applied. Not really in the consumer electronics world, but more the industrial and medical type customers. Next up on our list is plugs and cable assemblies. Actually, Hirose does have a cable assembly and in our product offering, but primarily we do sell a plug. When we're talking about that tactile click field, it is a combination of the plug and receptacle that does allow for that. And we certainly do suggest that your customer, if they have the opportunity to specify the plug side of the interface, to choose the Hirose CX Series CX60 product, and that is our plug. A couple of things I want to point out on the design of this. Underneath the mold, when you look at something like this, typically what it is, you have the connector on the end. It is actually mounted to a small PC board. They call that a paddle card. The wire is attached typically to that. We at Hirose also have a metal shield shell that goes around the outside of this whole little package here. and that is underneath this mold. Great crimp on the back side, full metal shield on the connector housing. Many of our competitors eliminate this metal housing, which means any of those lateral forces that get applied to their USB plug get applied to this joint right here, where that USB plug meets the paddle card. And that's often the failure. Whoops, just clicked on my screen. Sorry about that. That is often where the failure occurs in these type systems. And you probably have a cable sitting in the drawer someplace that you look at the Type-C connector and it's kind of leaning out at 5 or 10 degrees to the side. It's probably because this interface right here broke or snapped or was damaged. This metal shell on the outside of it helps provide additional structural integrity to push that force back towards the backside of the cable interface in the back here, where it is not likely to cause any damage. So this is a big plus for your customers. So let's talk a little bit more about applications. I want to show you a few application pictures. I typically will focus mostly in the industrial and medical market because I think the consumer electronics for us may not necessarily be your local focus, but if you have folks in the consumer electronics realm, certainly we are strong in that market space. But think industrial machine vision type products, camera systems, these are all looking for that nice high speed and power capabilities of USB. Remember we talked about 5 amps, that delivery of 5 amps or more. Capabilities, and certainly now with up to very high speed data performance. Ultrasounds, believe it or not, there are ultrasound transducers that plug right into portable devices like cell phones. And then there are medical devices like glucose monitors and equipment like that. They might have a charging dock type application. They may be a cable that plugs into the bottom. They have a Type-C receptacle on the bottom of the device, and that is used for maybe download some data in some cases or just for charging. We do offer lots of choices for those interfaces. Speaking of charging docks, coming soon. You haven't seen this yet. It's not on your website yet. It just showed up on my website 48 hours ago. It is a vertical plug that mounts to a PC board. Vertical plug, not a receptacle, a plug. This is for docking or cradle type applications. And we certainly used to carry one of these things that was used in the Micro B5 market. It was very popular. We're just releasing the vertical for the Type-C plug for docking station applications. I am looking for feedback related to this product and demand for customers. If you have an opportunity, there's one question that came up that we were asking about. Right now, it's a pretty standard plug, so it does have a bit of a tactile feel to it, like we have in our regular standard plug design. We've had some inquiries looking for something with a low retention force, depending on the size of the dock device. And I'm curious if any of you have that. So if you do have applications you think you could use for that, then please let us know. Talk to your local account manager with Hirose or rep agent or one of our RDMs, and we would appreciate to hear any feedback that you have related to this. We expect to get marketing materials released on this in the next month or two. Super excited about it. And that is the last item that I have. Any questions, Scott, in the chat box?
The moment.
Just was curious about the cycles for that vertical USB-C. Thousands, 10,000, because obviously a docking station would require a lot, maybe.
Yeah, that was actually one of the questions, and I'll be honest with you, I just got notice about this, about 2 days ago, and I have not seen the full test report on it yet, but the standard calls for 10,000 insertions, so that would be our target range, but I'm sure we're going to be north of that. I just don't have a final number on it, but I am working on that, and I will make sure that's a part of the final marketing documentations that gets released, but that is a great question.
One more. Hold on. Bear with me. Do you have a vertical mount version of the waterproof part, Dave?
So it's funny. I was just talking to one of our technical folks about this, and the answer is we are planning to release a vertical mounted plug that is waterproof. Are you looking for a plug or a receptacle, I guess would be the question. We are looking at doing a plug. We are also capturing market demand for a receptacle as well. I haven't had a ton of requests, maybe 1 or 2 for a vertical receptacle, but I have had inquiries for a vertical plug. We are reviewing that currently, and if you do have an application about it, I would like to potentially, obviously take that offline from this call, but have a conversation about that and learn a little bit about your potential project needs.
And I'll post Dave's email in the chat. So if anyone
Yes.
has additional questions or wants to follow up with one of these, you can reach out to him.
Exciting.
One last one, Dave. What kind of application would require 40 gigabyte?
Well, honestly, right now, I have not seen any, but if I was to make a guess right now, it's going to be some form of data storage device, or it's going to be extremely high resolution data, video type applications. Believe it or not, video doesn't need that kind of data speed right now. Most video is running sub 5 gig. Even your ultra high 4K and higher data speeds, we're not usually seeing bandwidth per channel above 5 gig. So I think it's going to be targeting at the data storage market, but I've not seen any devices yet. It is fairly new. Hirose is at 20 gig on our plug and many of our receptacles. We are rapidly getting everything certified up to the 20 gig level. And then we will probably, after we get through that round, we'll probably have to go for the 40 gig after that as we see demand for the need. They did not change the interface. It was more about the software side of the systems than it was about the mechanical.
Gotcha. Okay. And I did have one more pop up here before we transition over to tech.
Cool.
A customer asked about EMI for USB-C.
Yeah. So EMI is one of those tough ones. So when you think about EMI, it really depends on what frequency and how you're shielding. USB Type-C by its nature is fully surrounded with a shield on the receptacle and on the plug, but there are always small gaps in any of those shields. Our plug has got that outer body shield that does surround it completely, but there is still gaps on some of the receptacles where it's mounted to the PC board. That can influence a data system depending on how they're mounting it or where they're placing it. I've not seen a USB Type-C that fully covers the on the pins on the PC board side of the receptacle, though. I haven't seen any demand for that either.
Popped up. Do you have thumb screws to secure the USB-C cable?
So there's a couple of ways that's done. Yes, we do have it in a cable assembly version. Typically, it's handled by the mold design on the connector. The receptacle would not have that because the screws lie outside the range of the receptacle. But yeah, I've certainly seen that in the market. We see that in the machine vision market.
Okay. And then is there a right angle version?
Right angle, I'm showing what we sometimes call the flag style. It kind of stands up on its edge, kind of like our iX series product stands up on its edge. Not currently. I am gathering market information on that. I have a few customers that are interested in that. And as Scott mentioned, my email address, would love to talk a little bit more about what your potential opportunity is in that market space. We are exploring that. Yes.
Okay. Okay. With that, I'm going to transition it over to TAC.
Yeah, I took a lot of his
Dave.
time again today.
Again. Good afternoon, TAC.
All right. Can you hear me?
We can
We
hear
can.
Sorry, my speaker is something wrong, but anyway, let me share the screen. Oh, can you see the screen?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. All right. So thank you for your time, and let us review great points and ideas of how to promote FH34 SRJ. FH34 series is a long seller product since its debut in 2006, with historical sales of more than 3 billion. FH34D is the latest version with FPC and FFC side catch feature for higher retention force. Today's product, FH34 SRJ, has no side catch feature, and due to that, it is 1 millimeter slimmer than FH34D. But the benefits of FH34 SRJ is much more than that. FH34 SRJ is a 0.5 millimeter pitch, 1 millimeter height, top and bottom contact, backflip FPC and FFC connector. 4 key benefits to customer and advantage over competitors are, firstly, automotive grade high reliability, especially high FPC retention force. And what's important here is even with low cost non-side catch off the shelf FFC, and that is unique to this product and is achieved by patented contact structure. And secondly, this gives you high design flexibility thanks to its wide pin variations and having both top and bottom contacts. And thirdly, great signal integrity gives it superior high-speed transmission capabilities. And lastly, user friendliness, smooth flex cable insertion with wide and tapered opening that is extremely helpful for this kind of low profile connector. For those 4 key points, let's compare with major competitors here in US, company A, B, and C. Firstly, on reliability, this is the flex cable retention force comparison. FH34 SRJ is second to company A's, but that one relies on side catch feature. And FH34 SRJ achieves high retention force without side catch. That makes it unique. The primary purpose of adding side catch on flex cable is to strengthen its retention force. However, it requires connector-specific shape fabrication to the flex cable, which takes cost and time and make it special. On the other hand, FH34 SRJ does not require such fabrications, and customer can just use the low-cost non-side catch off-the-shelf FFC and still achieve high retention force. But please note, we need to check the off-the-shelf FFC thickness, dimensions, and tolerances before its use with FH34 SRJ. Scott, could you post the first question for today?
Eric?
All right, thank you. And let me move on. Secondly, on design flexibility, FH34 SRJ gives you much more pin count selection than any others, and it also gives you choice of usage as either top or bottom contacts, giving you great design flexibility for uncertainties during development like board layout changes. Thirdly, on signal integrity, unlike others, FH34 SRJ gives you great high-speed transmission capabilities up to 20 gigabits per second. Hey, Scott, could you post the second question for today? Right. Let me move on. And lastly, on user friendliness, FH34 SRJ gives you smooth flex cable insertion with wide and widely tapered opening. That is extremely helpful for this kind of low profile connector. No other competitors achieve both wide opening and wide tapers, which makes the operation more difficult and raise the risk of operational errors. Okay, now the time for the third question. Please, Scott. Okay, thank you. And this is an idea of how to promote this product based on the voice of current customers on why they chose FH34 SRJ. Quite frankly, customers didn't want to take time to think about connectors because choosing the connector was not their priority. And FH34 SRJ won their hearts and mind in that sense. From here, please watch as if you are our customer's design engineer looking for flex connectors for many connection points. Okay, you want to focus on your important design works. Don't want to be bothered by choosing the right flex connector. Here is an answer. But why Hirose FH34 SRJ? There are 3 reasons. You can just pick up low-cost non-side catch off-the-shelf FFC and still achieve high retention force. Primary purpose of adding tab on flex cable is to strengthen its retention force. However, it requires connector-specific shape fabrications to the flex cable, which takes cost and time. On the other hand, FH34 SRJ does not require such fabrications and still achieve high retention force, so you can save time and money. FH34 SRJ gives you much more pin count selection than any others, and it also gives you choice of usage as either top or bottom contacts, giving you great design flexibility for uncertainties during development, like board layout changes. And you don't need to worry about quality. It's proven. Choose Hirose FH34 SRJ today and forget about connectors. Okay, here's a quick recap about FH34 SRJ. 4 key benefits to customer and advantage over competitors are, firstly, automotive-grade high reliability, especially high FPC retention force, even with low-cost non-side catch off-the-shelf FFC. Secondly, this gives you high design flexibility thanks to its wide pin variations and having both top and bottom contacts. And thirdly, great signal integrity gives it superior high-speed transmission capabilities. And lastly, user-friendliness, smooth flex cable insertion with wide and tapered opening that is extremely helpful for this kind of low-profile connector. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Zach, thank you very much. All right. Coming up to open questions now. Does anyone have any additional open questions for Dave or Tak? At this point, if you do, just go ahead and unmute your mic and go ahead. Let me check the chat as well to make sure there's nothing in the chat. So I got Dave to address that one. I'm gonna go give it a going once warning to see if there's any additional questions. There's nothing in the chat. Again, if you have a question, just go ahead and unmute your mic and go ahead and ask any questions. Oh, will sample kits be shipped out? So I'll answer that one, guys. We actually don't do any official sample kits for just a specific product. We do have them in our sample portal, so they can be ordered from our sample portal. Just reach out to your regional distribution manager. They can help you do that. So they are available there. We do application-based sample kits, and within those application-based sample kits, you'll have various products that'll show up. But for a specific product like we're talking about today, we don't do just a straight out sample kit. Any other questions before we wrap up today? And I should emphasize that sample question. One more thing about that sample question. When you do go through our portal or in our portal to go ahead and order samples, there are options for board samples as well as options to order a sample that are not on board. So it's important to recognize the difference between the two when requesting samples. Dave, Tack, anything else that you wanted to add before we finish up today? Dave, if you'd advance to the last slide for me.
Yep.
I am good. Thank you.
Just good. Thank you everybody for coming out for the session. Some great questions, and look forward to hearing some great market feedback on some of the items that I mentioned during my presentation.
Excellent. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn. We are frequently posting product and very valuable product information and videos, as well as enhanced information on specific product areas or vertical areas, as well as we have a pretty robust YouTube channel. So don't be afraid to subscribe and follow us there. With that, our next session will be next month on Wednesday, December 13th. That little bow helping to wrap up 2023 will be our next product focus meeting. So we look forward to seeing everyone again in December, and have a great day.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
team.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great job.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good training.